Hey guys, Matt Couch here. Welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a study, and this study was done on a group of young female athletes, and it has to do with heading frequency and how often players actually head the ball in a game. Um, this is an important topic as over the last maybe not a couple years, but 5, 6 years, heading has become more and more of a concern with concussions and the kind of effect it has on the brain. So with the new heading standards that have been put in by U.S. Soccer, with the build out line, and also just being able to set up when, at what age players are allowed to train heading as well as actually do it in a game. I have my own opinions on this topic, but we're just going to stick to the study at hand, and maybe in another video I'll discuss kind of my view on heading. But yeah, let's get into the study. So from our website, under the blogs, we have the heading frequency, direct observation versus player recall. So this is a study that was done on just a group of female players in Canada, and what they did was they used two types of observations, or two types of ways of collecting data. And one was direct observation, where they videotaped games and then went into reviewing those games and counting how many headers the players actually did. Then they also had the players use a questionnaire that asked them to number or take account of the number of headers that they had done in a game or in a season. And the study was quite interesting because there was a lot of difference between the direct observation and then the player recall. So the actual article: direct player observation is needed to accurately qualify heading frequency in youth soccer. So they're pretty much saying that you need direct observation. You need someone else, players, taking a count of how many headers they are performing. So the introduction goes into kind of just an overview of what the study is about, and discusses the importance of necessity to qualify headers and establishing methods that can do that. And with this, they are determining that player recall and video-based observation found they would find equal heading numbers. Now you'll find as we go through this that wasn't the case. So the methods they used: the participants, again females, from an elite level soccer team in Canada, they practiced 4 days a week with one game. And the players who did not play at least 10 games were excluded from this study. And the protocol was all games were video recorded. A researcher and a trained soccer expert, so a coach or someone who's been in soccer for a very long time, that has training, some certifications or some credentialing, evaluated the headers for their legitimacy. The study also used a player questionnaire that asked players to recall as many headers as they could over the course of their season. The data analysis area just reviews different formulas that evaluated the data gathered. And then the results. So the results: headers were evaluated by one researcher. So they determined that just one researcher was fine. They didn't need an expert. The expert did confirm if the headers if the researcher was accurate in their assessment. And then players perform between 7 and 56 headers the entire season, with 9 being the max and 0 being the minimum. So player recall actually estimated headers between 18 and 100 per season. So you can see a huge difference in what the observers, the trained professional or the researcher, found compared to what the players actually thought they did. So with the highest estimate at 18 and lowest being 0, the results show that players overestimate their actual number of headers. So this really messes with data when a study is only using the player recall. This would really make it look like headers, there's a lot of heading going on in soccer. And for the discussion, players doubled the results of heading compared to the observation, the video observation. They overestimated by 51%. This is huge. Authors identified that number of headers can vary game to game and season to season. This is definitely true, as you know, and we'll get into also, is that depending on the level of play also, if you have, which is usually the case, a more rec team, there's going to be a lot of more just kicking of the ball that could just fly anywhere, hit someone in the face, or a player's going to have to head the ball, and this counts as part of a header. Where if you have a more advanced team, they're able to keep the ball on the ground, play more feet, and not rely so much on just kicking the ball into the air. In previous studies, males were found to have headed the ball more frequently. For females, this was not the case. But depending on the level of play, again, this could determine the frequency of headers as well as the personality of a player. So, or players. And if the personality of a player is more keeping it on the ground or not even wanting to engage in aerial contests or wanting to control the ball out of the air with their chest instead of heading it, or their thigh instead of heading it, again, the personality and kind of how a team is coached will also determine how many headers are actually going to be performed in a game. So the authors suggested that studies using a larger sample size, so a lot of different demographics, male versus female, age, and then level of play. Those are probably the three primary areas, but using a wider sample size, more players, more levels will help determine the heading frequency better. With this, it was a very small sample size, but it does give us a look into what the heading frequency is like and what has been done in previous studies with just the questionnaire versus the direct observation with video recording. So heading, the effect of heading on neurological health is unclear this time, and they are working on, again, these different studies to help determine what the effect is. How many times, there's been other studies of how many times it takes for a player to head the ball until you start seeing some kind of damage to it. Is it just once, or is it multiple times? We'll see if we can get that study reviewed at some point also. But self-recall should be analyzed cautiously, right? Because of the difference in the video observation and the player recall, that huge gap of 50% or 51% difference. When a researcher or anyone looks at this data, it's really important to realize that players can overestimate, they can underestimate. It's definitely something where it's human error, right? With a video, we have the video that can capture it. We can look at it and we can say, okay, yes, that was a header, or no, that wasn't a header, and we can actually determine it and really get down to how many headers have been performed. So how can we use this information? How can we use this research study? Well, we can see that with the player recall questionnaire, players overestimated by a lot. With the video capturing, we were able to see that there are headers going on. The frequency of them might not be as extreme as what players think they're actually doing, but it is something that we need to take into consideration for possibly each level of play too, rec versus a more competitive an elite team. This was done on an elite team, so if it was done on a rec, maybe those numbers are increased more. But using this data, we want to use this and be cautious of how we're analyzing it, because players being able to just kind of make up but recall inaccurate numbers, recording your team's practices, recording your team's games, looking at them yourself and seeing how many headers are taking place in a game, and then how can we possibly lessen that? The game is meant to be played more on the ground. Yes, it is played in the air, but how can we start keeping the ball on the ground more, limit the amount of headers that are needed? Yes, there are going to be necessary headers, but for a coach, trainer, anyone looking to improve their team's play of keeping it on the ground, identifying how many headers there may have been in a game and sharing that with your team and seeing it and reminding them, let's try to keep the ball on the ground, right? Let's not just kick it out into the air or clear the ball. Again, there's times where that's needed, but let's see if we can figure ourselves out of it, or figure out a way out of a situation. This is all development for them. Young players, they need to figure it out. Can't just be kicking the ball and then heading it. So yeah, use this for your team. Trying to videotape any games, any trainings, seeing how much they're playing in the air, analyze that, and then have a discussion with them. That's probably the best way we can use this study. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. We'll get another study and evaluated and shared with you shortly. Thanks.